Something is happening to your retirement right now, at this very moment, that's pulling money from your account every month without you noticing. It's not fraud. It's not a banking error. It's not an external scam. It's something more subtle, quieter, and that's precisely what makes it so dangerous. Most retirees discover it too late, when they look back and realize they could have avoided years of losses. And the worst part is that this mistake doesn't scream, doesn't warn you, doesn't call attention to itself. It simply happens month after month, eroding the purchasing power of that money you worked so hard to secure. When you retired, you had a plan. You knew how much you'd receive. You knew roughly how to spend it. You had a financial routine that seemed to make sense. In the first months, maybe even the first years, everything seemed to work fine. Bills got paid. There was a little left over. Life went on. But then something started to change. Not overnight. It was gradual. So gradual you didn't even notice. Suddenly, that money left over at the end of the month started to shrink. The bills stayed the same, your lifestyle too, but it felt like the money wasn't stretching as far as before. You started wondering if you were spending more, if you'd forgotten a bill, if something was wrong. And most of the time, the answer seemed to be no. Everything was the same, but the money simply wasn't reaching as far as it used to. This is the point where most people start making adjustments. They cut an expense here, another there. They stop buying something they enjoyed. They tighten their belt without really understanding why. And they keep living like this, thinking the problem is them, that they're spending poorly, that they need to be more disciplined. But the truth is the problem isn't in your spending. The problem is in how money loses value without you doing absolutely anything. And this has a name. Inflation. But it's not the inflation you see in the news, not that annual percentage that seems distant and theoretical. It's real inflation, the kind you feel at the grocery store, at the pharmacy, in your electric bill, in gas prices. It's the inflation that transforms that fixed retirement amount into something increasingly smaller in practical terms. When you were working, this was less noticeable. Your salary had adjustments, sometimes small, sometimes insufficient, but they happened. You had the possibility of earning more, getting a promotion, working overtime. Your income had some elasticity. But now, in retirement, that number is fixed. You receive the same amount every month. And even when there's some adjustment, it rarely keeps pace with a real increase in prices. Because the official adjustment is calculated based on general indexes. But your life isn't general. Your life is specific. You buy medications, pay household bills, buy food, and these items increase at different speeds. Often, much faster than the official index recognizes. Let's use a practical example. 5 years ago, you receive a retirement amount that paid all your bills and still left room for some extras. Dinner out once in a while, a gift for the grandkids, new clothes. Today, you receive an amount that's nominally even higher because of adjustments. But in practice, that money buys less. Dinner out got more expensive. The gift for the grandkids, too. New clothes are out of the budget. And you didn't change your habits. You didn't start spending irresponsibly. What changed was the real value of your money. Each dollar you receive today is worth less than it was 5 years ago in terms of what it can buy. And this process is continuous. It doesn't stop. It doesn't wait. It doesn't warn you. Most people don't do this math. They don't sit down to calculate how much purchasing power they've lost over the years. They simply feel that money is tighter and adjust their life to fit into this smaller space. But when you actually stop to look at the numbers, the reality is frightening. If average inflation was 4% per year and your retirement adjustment was 3%, you lost 1% of purchasing power that year. Seems small, but it's not, because the next year you lose again, and the year after that too. And this accumulates. In 10 years, the difference between what you could be buying and what you actually can buy becomes enormous. It's not an abstract number. It's less food in the cart. It's a medication you hesitate to buy. It's an outing you decide not to take. And the cruelest part is that this doesn't happen because you did something wrong. It's not your fault. It's not lack of planning. It's not irresponsibility. It's simply how the system works. Your retirement was calculated based on a value that made sense at the moment you retired, but that value wasn't designed to maintain the same weight over decades. It was conceived as a fixed number, adjusted periodically, but without account for the fact that prices of items that actually matter to you rise differently from the general index. So you're stuck, receiving the same amount, watching that amount be worth less and less, without much room to react. The day-to-day reality. Now, let's talk about what this means in practice. Day to day, you go to the grocery store, and notice the cart isn't as full as it used to be. You buy the same items, but the total on the receipt is higher. You look and think maybe you grabbed something extra, but you didn't. What happened was prices went up, and they didn't go up just once. They went up multiple times, little by little, without fanfare. Rice went up, beans went up, oil went up, sugar went up. Each item individually went up so little you didn't even register it. But when you add it all up, the difference is there. And the next month, prices go up again. And the month after that too. And your retirement doesn't keep pace. Medications are another brutal example. If you take continuous medication, you know exactly what I'm talking about. What cost $50 3 years ago now costs $80. What cost $100 now costs $140. And you can't simply stop taking it. It's not a choice. You need that medicine. So what happens? You cut from somewhere else. You stop buying something you enjoyed. You stop doing something you used to do to be able to afford the medication. And it shouldn't be this way. You worked your whole life precisely so you wouldn't have to make these choices in retirement. But you're making them because the money isn't keeping up. Household bills also enter this equation. Electricity, water, gas, internet, phone, all of this increases, and it increases frequently. You get the bill and see it's higher than last month. Sometimes you even try to economize. You turn off lights, take shorter showers, use less gas. But even doing all this, the bill keeps rising because it's not just your consumption that determines the amount. It's the rate, and the rate increases, and your retirement doesn't increase at the same rate. So you're juggling finances every month, trying to fit expenses that are growing into an income that's not growing at the same pace. And there's more. There are unexpected expenses. An appliance that breaks, a repair needed in the house, a health problem requiring an exam or treatment that insurance doesn't fully cover. When you were working, these surprises were solved with a bit more effort, sometimes with overtime, sometimes by tightening your belt for a month or two. But now in retirement, there's no overtime, no bonuses, no extra 13th month pay. What there is that fixed monthly amount. And when something unexpected comes up, you have to take it from somewhere. Often, this means dipping into some reserve you had, if you still have one, or asking for help, or simply not solving the problem and learning to live with it. The psychological weight. This is the invisible mistake. It's not you spending poorly. It's not you being irresponsible. It's the fact that your fixed income is losing real value over time, and there's not much you can do within the current system to completely prevent it. What you can do is be aware. Understand that this is happening. Stop blaming yourself thinking the problem is in your spending habits when really the problem is in the progressive devaluation of your money. Because when you understand this, you stop making blind cuts and start making more informed decisions. Understanding this process also helps you plan better what's still possible to plan. If you know money will be worth less over time, you start thinking differently about small reserves, about where to keep some extra money if you still have it, about how to prioritize expenses. You stop postponing essential things thinking you'll be able to do them later, because you understand that later the money will be worth even less. You stop economizing on things that are important for your quality of life, thinking you're being prudent, when really you're depriving yourself unnecessarily, because the money you're saving for the future is also losing value. So sometimes it makes more sense to use it now than to wait. This doesn't mean spending irresponsibly. It means spending consciously, knowing that today's dollar is worth more than tomorrow's dollar, knowing that if you want to do something, buy something, experience something, it's better to do it now than postpone it indefinitely thinking there will be money left in the future, because the future will have less real money, even if the number in the account seems the same or even slightly higher. There's another aspect few people talk about, the psychological feeling of always falling behind. You see prices rising. You see people around you consuming. You see opportunities you'd like to take advantage of, but you feel your money doesn't reach. And this generates deep frustration. It's not envy. It's not excessive ambition. It's the legitimate feeling that you worked, planned, did everything right, and you're still seeing your standard of living decline without having done anything to deserve it. And that feeling eats away at you, makes you feel powerless, makes you question whether it was worth contributing all those years, whether it was worth following the rules, because in the end it seems the system isn't holding up its end. And the truth is the system really does have flaws, not necessarily from bad faith, but by design. Retirement was conceived to guarantee an income, but not necessarily to guarantee that income maintains the same purchasing power over decades. That would be ideal, but it's not what happens in practice. Adjustments exist, but they're generic, based on indexes that don't reflect the specific reality of those living on retirement. Those who are retired spend proportionally more on health care, on medications, on care, and these items increase faster than the general average of inflation. But the adjustment doesn't account for this. So you receive an increase that seems fair on paper, but in practice doesn't cover the real increase in your expenses. A silent loss. This creates a situation of continuous and silent loss. You don't lose everything at once. It's not dramatic. It's gradual. It's like a dripping faucet. Each drop alone makes no difference. But over months, over years, that dripping fills a bucket. And when you look at the bucket, you realize how much you've lost, how much you could have done, bought, lived, if the value of your money had been maintained. But it wasn't. And nobody clearly warned you about this. Nobody sat with you on retirement day and said, look, this amount you're going to receive will be worth less and less over time, even with adjustments. Prepare for this. And that's why many retirees start depending on family help. Not because they spent wrongly, but because the money simply isn't enough anymore. Children who help with groceries. Grandchildren who pay for medication. Relatives who cover repair. And this generates a feeling of dependence nobody wants to have. You worked your whole life to be independent, to not have to ask, to have your own. And now you need help not because you did something wrong, but because the real value of your retirement was eroded over time. There's also the question of dignity. Nobody should have to choose between eating well and buying medication. Nobody should have to calculate whether it's worth turning on the air conditioning on an intensely hot day because the electric bill will be too expensive. Nobody should have to give up social interaction, a lunch with friends, a simple outing, because the money doesn't stretch. But this happens. It happens every day. And it happens to people who did everything right, who worked, who contributed, who planned, but who are being harmed by an economic process beyond their control. Recognizing this isn't defeatism. It's realism. It's looking at the situation as it really is, without illusions, without unnecessary guilt. And from that recognition, you can make better decisions. You can stop depriving yourself of essential things, thinking you're being prudent. You can stop blaming yourself for not being able to stretch the money like before. You can start talking openly with family about this reality, without shame, without feeling you're failing. Because you're not failing. You're facing a system that wasn't designed to fully protect your purchasing power over time. Is there a solution? And if you're wondering whether there's a solution, the honest answer is there's no magic solution. There's no single action you can take that will completely reverse this process. But there are ways to minimize the impact. The first is awareness. Understanding what's happening already changes how you handle money. The second is prioritization. Knowing money will be worth less tomorrow helps you decide what to do today. The third is seeking information. There are programs, benefits, exemptions that many retirees don't know about, and that could ease the financial burden a bit. The fourth is not accepting passively. If you think the adjustment was unfair, if you feel your rights aren't being respected, seek guidance. There are associations, groups, entities that defend retirees' interests. But above all, the most important thing is not to internalize this as personal failure. You're not in this situation because you were imprudent. You're in this situation because there's a structural flaw in how retirement is adjusted over time. And recognizing this is liberating because it removes from you the weight of a guilt that isn't yours. And it allows you to look forward with more clarity, knowing you did and continue doing the best possible within the circumstances you were given. The invisible mistake isn't in you. It's in the system. And the more people understand this, the more pressure can be put on for real changes to happen. Changes that guarantee those who retire can truly live with dignity without seeing their standard of living erode month after month, year after year. Until then, what you can do is be aware, make informed decisions, and not carry alone a burden that should never have been yours.